Hello. My fiancée cheated on me and still expected me to pay for her girl's trip, saying that refusing would be controlling. When I stopped funding it and walked away instead, she fell apart in front of the same friend she had been bragging to about her freedom. My name is Evan. I am 34 and I work as a procurement analyst for a hospital network in Charlotte. My job is basically contracts, spreadsheets, vendor problems, and making sure nobody notices me because things are running on time. My life is structured, which I like. I am up early, I keep a budget, and I do not make chaos for fun. My fiancée is Brooke. She is 31 and works in event marketing for a boutique agency. We had been together just under 4 years, engaged for 8 months, and living together for a little over a year when this happened. Brooke is the kind of person who treats every normal inconvenience like a personal insult. Wrong coffee order, bad traffic, delayed package, someone using the last clean wine glass. Everything became a performance. At first I wrote it off as stress because her job is heavy on clients, image, and constant smiling. After a while I realized that was just how she was when something did not revolve around her. We had already started paying deposits for the wedding. Nothing huge or flashy, but enough that the planning had become real. Venue, photographer, save the dates, all that boring adult stuff that only matters because it costs money. I was covering more than half of it because I earned more and because Brooke always had some reason her money was tied up. A work dinner she had to front. A dress she supposedly needed for an event. A weekend trip with friends that was good for networking somehow. I noticed a pattern before I admitted it to myself. Anything fun for Brooke was urgent. Anything shared was negotiable. Rent had to be split carefully. Groceries had to be discussed. Wedding expenses required long talks. But if Brooke wanted a spa weekend, new luggage, or expensive skincare because her face was under stress, suddenly I was expected to be supportive instead of practical. About 2 months before everything blew up, Brooke started acting weird with her phone. Not subtle weird either. Smiling at it and turning the screen away. Taking calls on the balcony. Sleeping with it under her pillow like she was hiding state secrets. When I asked about it, she got instantly hostile and told me that not every part of her life was my business just because we were engaged. That answer sat with me. Then her friends started mentioning a girl's trip to Miami like it was some big reward Brooke deserved before the wedding. She talked about it nonstop. Flights, matching outfits, beach clubs, hotel upgrades. The whole thing sounded way more expensive than her half of the wedding payments she kept postponing. I did not say much at first. Then one Thursday night, I saw a message flash across her phone screen while she was in the shower. And that was the moment the whole situation stopped feeling vague and started feeling very specific. The message popped up on Brooke's phone while it was sitting on the kitchen counter. She had left it there when she went to shower, and I was just standing nearby, making coffee before work. I was not snooping. The screen lit up on its own. What caught my attention was the preview. It said something like last night was worth the risk. Then there was a name I did not recognize. I stared at it for a few seconds trying to convince myself there was some normal explanation. Maybe a coworker joking about something. Maybe someone talking about a work event. But the longer I looked at it, the less normal it felt. The wording alone sounded wrong. I did not unlock her phone. I did not scroll through anything. I just stood there thinking about the last 2 months. The secret phone behavior. The weird defensiveness whenever I asked simple questions. The sudden obsession with going out more often without me. All those things started lining up in a way that made a lot more sense than I wanted them to. A minute later, Brooke came back into the kitchen wrapped in a towel, scrolling through her phone immediately like she always did. I watched her face when she saw the message. That moment told me everything. Her expression changed instantly. Not surprise. Not confusion. More like panic that someone else might have seen it. She glanced up and noticed me looking at her. Then she did something that people only do when they know exactly what is going on. She locked the screen and flipped the phone face down. I asked her who was texting her that early. Brooke answered too fast. She said it was a coworker asking about an event schedule. The problem was she did not ask how I knew someone texted her. She went straight into an explanation. That is usually a bad sign. I just nodded and did not push further right then. There is no point arguing when someone is already in defensive mode. But that message stuck in my head the entire day. And later that night, something happened that removed the last bit of doubt I had about what was really going on. That evening, Brooke said she was going out with coworkers. That by itself was not unusual. Her job involved a lot of networking events and after-work drinks. Normally, she would tell me where they were going or what kind of event it was. This time, the explanation was vague. She said it was just a small group thing, and she might be home late. The tone already felt defensive before I even asked anything. Around 10 that night, I was on the couch watching a game when one of Brooke's friends posted an Instagram story. Her friends tag each other constantly, so their posts show up on my feed whether I look for them or not. The video was from some late-night house party one of their friends was hosting. Loud music, people crowded into the living room, plastic cups everywhere, the kind of chaotic gathering where half the people probably did not even know the person whose house it was. I saw Brooke almost immediately. She was standing near the kitchen island with a group of people I did not recognize. One of them was a guy with his arm resting comfortably around her waist like it had been there all night. Brooke was leaning toward him laughing. Not the polite laugh she uses with clients. The relaxed one. The kind you use when you are completely comfortable with someone. The video only lasted about 10 seconds, but it was enough. The guy leaned down and said something into her ear. Brooke tilted her head toward him and smiled in a way I had not seen directed at me in a while. Then the story ended. I watched it twice just to make sure I was not reading too much into it. But there is a point where your brain stops trying to be charitable and just accepts what it is looking at. I did not text her. I did not call. Instead, I closed the app and sat there thinking about the message I saw that morning. Last night was worth the risk. That line suddenly made a lot more sense. Brooke came home around 1 in the morning. She walked in quietly like she did not want to wake me up. The problem was I was still sitting in the living room with the lights on. The second she saw me awake, her entire body language changed. She asked why I was still up. I told her I had seen the video her friend posted. And that was the moment the conversation stopped being vague and started getting very direct. Brooke froze for a second when I mentioned the video. It was subtle, but you could see the moment her brain started calculating what I might have seen. Then she switched immediately into defense mode. She rolled her eyes and asked if I was seriously stalking her friend's social media now. That was her first move. Not asking what exactly I saw. Not explaining anything. Just trying to flip the situation back onto me. I told her I was not stalking anyone. The story popped up on my feed, and I recognized her in it. Then I mentioned the guy with his arm around her. That was when her expression hardened. Brooke sighed dramatically and tossed her purse onto the counter like I was the one exhausting her. She said it was just a friend from the party and people were standing close because the place was crowded. I did not argue with her. Instead, I told her exactly what I had seen that day. I reminded her about the message that popped up on her phone that morning. The one that said last night was worth the risk. I explained how she locked the screen the second she noticed I might have seen it. Then I told her about the video from the party. The guy with his arm around her waist. The way she was leaning into him like that was normal. While I was talking, she kept trying to interrupt. She said I was twisting things. She said I was making assumptions. But I just kept going. I told her that whether she admitted it or not, the situation looked exactly like what it was. And the bigger problem was that instead of being honest, she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. At that point, the conversation stopped being complicated. I told her very calmly that I was not interested in marrying someone who behaved like this. Brooke stared at me like she expected the argument to continue. Instead, I told her she should start packing her things. For a moment, she just blinked at me. Then she laughed like I had just said something ridiculous. She asked if I was seriously throwing her out over a misunderstanding. I told her it was not a misunderstanding, and the engagement was over. For a few seconds, Brooke just stood there staring at me like I had said something completely unreasonable. Then she laughed. Not nervous laughter. The dismissive kind she used whenever she thought someone was overreacting. She asked if I was seriously ending our engagement over what she kept calling a misunderstanding. I told her it stopped being a misunderstanding the moment she started lying about it. That made her expression change immediately. Brooke hates being called out directly. During our relationship, she always preferred to argue around the issue instead of admitting anything. She crossed her arms and told me I was blowing things way out of proportion. According to her, nothing actually happened. The guy from the party was just someone she met through friends. They were talking. That was it. Then she said something that really showed how she viewed the situation. She told me even if something had happened, it would not justify me throwing her out of the apartment. The way she said it made it sound like loyalty was optional, but my reaction was the real problem. I reminded her of something important. This apartment was in my name. The lease, the rent, the utilities. Everything. She moved in after we got engaged because it made planning the wedding easier. So I explained the situation as clearly as possible. If she had been honest when I asked, maybe we could have at least talked about what was happening. But lying to my face and then calling me controlling for questioning, it was not something I was going to build a marriage on. Brooke's attitude shifted the moment she realized I was not backing down. She stopped laughing. Instead, she started arguing. She said I was being dramatic. She said couples work through things like this all the time. She even suggested I was sabotaging our future because I could not handle a little uncertainty. I listened for about 30 seconds before interrupting her. Then I repeated the same sentence I had already said. The engagement was over, and she needed to pack her things. That was the moment Brooke finally understood I was serious, and her reaction changed completely. The moment Brooke realized I was serious, her whole attitude flipped. The dismissive confidence disappeared almost instantly. First, she tried guilt. She asked if I was really willing to throw away 4 years together over one situation. She started bringing up the wedding plans, the deposits, the fact that our families already knew about the engagement. Then she said something that was clearly meant to pressure me. She said everyone would think I overreacted. I told her that was fine. People can think whatever they want. That answer did not help her mood. Brooke paced around the living room for a minute, clearly trying to figure out which tactic might work next. Eventually, she switched strategies. Suddenly, she started acting calm again. She said maybe we both needed a little space to cool down. Maybe I should sleep on the decision and we could talk about it again tomorrow like adults. I told her there was nothing to sleep on. The decision was already made. That was when the anger showed up. She asked if I was seriously kicking her out in the middle of the night. I pointed out that it was barely past 1 in the morning, and she had just come back from a party with the guy she was clearly entertaining behind my back. So yes, she needed to start packing. Brooke muttered something under her breath and walked into the bedroom. I followed a minute later just to make sure the situation stayed focused on packing instead of arguing. She started throwing clothes into a suitcase aggressively, like every shirt had personally offended her. While she packed, she kept talking, mostly complaining about how unfair I was being. Then she said something that almost made me laugh. She reminded me that her girl's trip to Miami was already planned for the following month and asked what she was supposed to do now. At first I thought she was joking, but she was completely serious. Brooke explained that since we had been splitting wedding expenses, I was supposed to help cover part of the Miami trip too. According to her, it was basically a pre-wedding celebration. Then she said refusing to pay for it would be controlling. That was the moment I realized she still had not understood the situation at all. For a second, I honestly thought Brooke was joking. We had just ended our engagement. She was packing her things because she had been caught entertaining another guy behind my back. And somehow the thing she was worried about was whether I was still paying for her Miami girls trip. I asked her to repeat what she just said. She sighed like I was the one being difficult and explained it again. The trip was already planned. Flights, hotel, reservations. According to her, it was basically part of the wedding timeline, and I had originally agreed to help cover some of it. Then she said something that perfectly captured her mindset. She told me refusing to pay now would be controlling. I just stared at her for a moment, trying to understand how someone could be this disconnected from reality. So I explained the situation as clearly as possible. There was no wedding anymore, which meant there was no pre-wedding trip, which also meant I was not funding a vacation for someone who had just cheated on me. Brooke immediately got defensive. She said I was being petty. According to her, the trip had nothing to do with what happened tonight. It was about her celebrating with her friends before getting married. I reminded her that the marriage part had just ended about 15 minutes earlier. That did not seem to register. Instead, she started complaining about how embarrassing it would be if she had to cancel. Her friends were expecting the trip. Everyone already knew about it. Then she said something that really showed where her priorities were. She told me she had already been talking about the trip with her friends and bragging about how much freedom she still had even while being engaged. Apparently, the Miami trip was supposed to prove she was not tied down. Hearing that honestly made the entire situation feel even more ridiculous. I told her that if she wanted to go celebrate her freedom in Miami, she was welcome to do that. She just was not doing it with my money. Brooke stared at me for a few seconds, clearly furious. Then she grabbed her suitcase, muttered something about how her friends would understand her side of the story, and walked out of the apartment. Later that night, I found out she had gone straight to one of their places. And that was where things really started falling apart for her. I did not hear anything from Brooke for a couple of days after she left. Honestly, I was fine with that. The apartment was quiet again, which felt strange after living together for over a year. I spent the weekend doing boring practical things. Changing the passwords on a few shared accounts, canceling the catering deposit, emailing the venue to explain that the wedding was no longer happening. It was not exactly a fun weekend, but it was straightforward. Then Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from one of Brooke's friends. Her name is Kayla. We were not close, but we had met plenty of times at birthdays and group dinners. The message was short. She asked if Brooke was actually serious about what she had told them. That immediately caught my attention. I asked what Brooke had said. Kayla replied with a screenshot. It was from a group chat Brooke had with several of her friends. Apparently, Brooke had shown up at Kayla's apartment with her suitcase and immediately started venting. The screenshot showed part of Brooke's rant. According to her version of events, I had thrown her out of the apartment over nothing. She said I got insecure and controlling because she went to a party with friends. Then she told them I was now refusing to pay for the Miami trip just to punish her. At the bottom of the screenshot, Brooke had written something else. She told them she had been bragging to everyone about how she could still do whatever she wanted even while engaged because I funded most of her lifestyle anyway. Reading that part actually made me pause. Not because it surprised me, because it confirmed exactly how she had been talking about me when I was not around. Kayla followed up with another message. She said Brooke had been crying and furious at the same time, going on about how unfair it was that I cut her off financially right before the trip. Then Kayla added something interesting. Apparently, not everyone in the room was automatically on Brooke's side. In fact, the moment someone asked why her fiancé suddenly ended the engagement, the story started falling apart pretty quickly. According to Kayla, the conversation in that apartment got awkward pretty quickly. At first, Brooke was very confident about her version of events. She told everyone I had overreacted, that I threw her out for no reason, and that now I was trying to punish her by refusing to pay for the Miami trip. But someone eventually asked the obvious question. Why did the engagement actually end? Brooke apparently tried to keep it vague. She said we had a fight and that I was insecure about her having a life outside the relationship. That explanation worked for about 30 seconds. Then another friend asked about the guy she had been texting. Kayla told me Brooke's entire attitude changed at that point. She got defensive immediately. According to the people in the room, Brooke tried to downplay it. She said the guy was just someone she met at a party and that nothing serious happened. But the problem was that some of those same friends had already seen her flirting with him before. And once that part came out, the conversation shifted. Instead of everyone comforting her, people started asking more direct questions. Like why she was talking to another guy like that while she was engaged. Or why she expected me to keep paying for things after the relationship ended. Kayla said Brooke kept repeating the same argument. That I had originally agreed to help pay for the trip. That backing out now was controlling. Apparently, that logic did not land the way she expected. One of her friends pointed out something very simple. If the engagement was over, then the financial support that came with it was obviously over too. That was when Brooke apparently lost her composure. Kayla said she started crying and yelling about how unfair everything was. How embarrassing it would be if she had to cancel the Miami trip now after talking it up for weeks. And how I had ruined her plans just because I could not handle a little freedom in the relationship. By the end of the night, the mood in that apartment had completely shifted. Instead of celebrating their upcoming trip, Brooke was having a meltdown in front of the same friends she had been bragging to about her independence. And the worst part for her was that most of them were not actually defending her anymore. Kayla told me the whole situation ended in a way that was honestly hard not to picture. Brooke had spent weeks hyping up that Miami trip. According to her friends, she talked about it constantly. The beach clubs they were going to hit, the outfits she bought, the hotel they were staying at. More than once she apparently joked that getting married did not mean she had to give up her freedom. And part of that story involved me. She had been telling them that I covered a lot of her expenses anyway, so the trip was basically handled. In her mind, it was proof she could live however she wanted while still having the stability of a fiancé at home. But when she showed up at Kayla's place that night with a suitcase and a completely different story, the whole narrative collapsed. Once people realized the engagement ended because she was entertaining another guy behind my back, the sympathy disappeared quickly. And when she admitted that I was no longer paying for the trip, the tone of the room changed even more. Kayla said someone finally asked her a simple question. If you wanted all that freedom, why were you expecting him to keep funding it? Apparently, Brooke did not have a good answer. Instead, she got emotional. Kayla described it as a full meltdown. Crying, yelling, complaining about how embarrassing it was going to be to cancel the trip after bragging about it for weeks. Some of the friends were trying to calm her down. Others were clearly annoyed that the entire situation was now awkward because of choices Brooke made herself. When Kayla finished telling me all that, she ended the message with one last comment. She said Brooke had spent the entire engagement talking about how independent she was. Now she was discovering what independence actually meant. After that conversation, I did not hear from Brooke again. No messages. No apologies. Nothing. And honestly, that was fine with me. Because the situation made one thing very clear. Someone who cheats on you while expecting you to keep funding their lifestyle is not a partner. They are a liability. And walking away from that was probably the smartest financial decision I made all year. Bye-bye.